After decades of poor water management and drought, Australia's farming heartland is drying up, and authorities are concerned the rising global demand for food is straining the nation's agricultural industry. I'm Fauzia Ibrahim. On this edition of 101 East, we look at the crisis devastating Australia's large river system and threatening its food bowl. Australia is the driest inhabited continent on Earth. But despite that, it's been able to build a thriving economy providing agriculture to the rest of the world. Now, those industries are under threat as the country dries up. Nick Lazaridis reports.
Australians know it as the mighty Murray, the longest single river in the world's driest continent. Along with its major tributary, the Darling, it's been the lifeblood for Australia's inland food bowl, the Murray-Darling Basin. But after a 7-year drought, the river system appears to be dying, and an environmental disaster now looms large. With less water than ever for irrigation, the number of dead farms has risen sharply, and experts are warning that without radical long-term measures, Australia's food basket will become a desolate wasteland. A result that not only threatens Australia's ability to feed itself, but risks an export trade to Asia and the Middle East worth more than $20 billion. To see your district full of properties like this must be heartbreaking.
It is. We're caught up in the climate change debate. That's really what's happening.
But is climate change really to blame? For almost a decade, the region has been in the grip of the longest, hottest drought on record, a clear sign of global warming. But there's mounting evidence that man-made factors may pose a far greater threat to Australia's food basket. Decades of neglect, mismanagement and greed. At the mouth of the Murray, the first symptoms of the river's sickness are starting to emerge.
The implications are just absolutely massive on an environmental basis. It may get to a point where it will be irretrievable, that we'll just have an absolute stinking sulphuric cesspool here with no birds and no fish.
As the debate over how much of the environment should be sacrificed for food grows more intense, a dog-eat-dog struggle is taking place, with water as the prize. When a tropical deluge struck southern Queensland in early March, the torrent of water it generated was dubbed as a once-in-a-century flood. As the floodwaters surged downwards towards New South Wales, many Australians assumed that the Murray-Darling system would soon be out of danger, with a new lease on life.
I'll put it to you this way, there'll be no flood. There'll be no flood here in South Australia. And historically, there would have been.
As farmers in the northern states celebrated the big flood, in South Australia's Coorong region at the mouth of the Murray River, excitement gave way to disbelief when it became clear that the floodwaters would never arrive.
Here in South Australia, there is devastation.
I'm being driven through the Coorong by one of the activists who is fighting to save it.
Disaster down here.
Like other residents here, Steve Alexander is outraged that the biggest flood event in living memory is being prevented from running its natural course through the mouth of the river.
It's not going to push fresh water out into the sea, which, that's what this system's been doing for eternity,
Much of the water has already been promised to irrigators upstream. But it's not just the official system of water allocation that bothers Steve. He's especially angered by a problem that the government appears to be doing little to stop: the secret water harvesting that Steve claims is taking place in the upper reaches of the river system.
I basically think that Australia would seriously get a shock on the amount of water that's stored in private storages. It would be tens of thousands of gigalitres. But this storage is just out of control. It is out of control.
Although stories have been circulating for years about greedy landowners siphoning off massive quantities of water, there's been no attempt to investigate them. And so Steve decided to mount his own aerial survey with some astonishing results.
The Christmas floods that we had, you could actually fly to Burke, and in the Burke surrounding areas, there was more water sitting in private storages than there was in the government storages.
The area of southern Queensland and northern New South Wales targeted in Steve's survey is Australia's cotton heartland. Nearly all of Australia's cotton is grown there, a billion-dollar crop that accounts for around 10% of the global market.
Well, I've been flying up in this area since '99. We've been keeping a pretty fair eye on it since then.
Steve's survey was conducted just before and after the big flood, and it documents what appears to be an ambitious dam expansion effort to maximise the water harvest.
You can just see that this storage is chock-a-block full, yet we've got all these like bulldozers and dump trucks and excavators, and we've just had this huge flood, yet they're still making it bigger. But we've got full rivers, as you can see there, that have been blocked off.
Some landowners seem to have taken extreme measures, like in this photograph in which it appears that an entire tributary has been blocked.
There's a bank across here, there's a little spillway, and there's no water in the river here where the river continues on. So here, every time that we get water up here in this country, that river there is going to be blocked off. You know, I'm just saying it's not right.
In the far southwest of New South Wales, a pair of outback environmentalists inspect the eerie forest of dead trees rising from the bed of Lake Corndilla.
We've had some incredibly dry years, and along when we thought we should have been getting water coming down the river, when there was good rain up north, it just never got here.
Connected to the Darling River, the bone-dry Lake Corndilla is one of 4 natural lakes that normally fill up when the river is in flood. Modified to store and release water, they form what is known as the Menindee Lake System, a massive government storage facility that provides water to irrigators in 3 states, as well as the outback mining city of Broken Hill, where Barney Stevens and Anne Evers launched the Darling River Action Group.
We've been seeing fairly large rainfalls up north, and we've been seeing very little water come through.
Like Steve Alexander, Barney Stevens blames the cotton growers upstream.
And we've had a genuine drought that lasted a good 10 years. We've had what we call the cotton drought, where it's a drought down here because the cotton farmers are sucking the water out of the river upstream.
Barney says that while the actions of cotton growers have had the most devastating impact, overproduction of other crops has also played a part.
We've been overproducing out of this basin. We've been taking too much water out. I'm sure this basin can handle a certain amount of extraction. There's just been too much of it.
I think people are forgetting about the incredibly dry decade we've had, and this parched country has, that rain and that flooding has just replenished the dry soil.
Given the serious nature of the issues confronting the food bowl, we approached the Minister for Climate Change and Water, Penny Wong, for a response, but she was unavailable for comment. Cotton industry representatives say the allegations of secret dams and unauthorised water storage are simply laughable.
There's just no evidence for that, and certainly, they are regulated very closely by the New South Wales and Queensland state governments, and there are, very, very nasty penalties if people, are caught, and that includes the cancellation of their water entitlement, which is their livelihood. So, in my time in the industry, I've never seen people, do that or try and jeopardise their licence. It just doesn't happen.
Although he acknowledges that the drought has made the situation worse, Barney believes this is a man-made crisis that might have been averted if the warning signs hadn't been ignored decades earlier.
We had a warning sign back in 1990-91. On the Darling River there was an outbreak of blue-green algae that was 1,000 kilometres long, and that was a world record. And that blue-green algae the outbreak was due to hot weather, lack of flow, and wash out of phosphates and nitrates from fertilisers.
You know, we don't want to go, you know, killing the goose that laid the golden egg and destroying irrigated agriculture, because that will destroy regional communities.
Cotton industry spokesman Adam Kay says he's growing weary of what he sees as an ill-informed mantra that cotton is a damaging crop.
We are the most water efficient, we produce the highest yields and some of the highest quality in the world, and cotton is ideally suited to these areas that we're producing it in Australia.
After weeks of anxious waiting, the once-in-a-century torrent pours into Lake Menindee. With the arrival of the floodwaters, the lake system fulfills its role as a vital safety net for Australia's inland food bowl.
This is Lake Wetherill, and it's gradually being emptied into Lake Pamamaroo. And Lake Pamamaroo has been emptied into Lake Menindee. The idea is to make way for all the floodwaters coming down. They have to make space for the floodwaters.
For now, at least, the Darling River has a continuous flow, but Barney says years of having no water flow through to the ocean has had a devastating effect.
The Darling flows into the Murray River, and the Murray River used to empty into the sea. And when it emptied into the sea, it used to carry 20 million tonnes of salt to the sea every year. And all that salt's coming out of the Murray-Darling Basin. And for the last several years, there's been no flow into the sea. So none of that salt has left the basin, it's all still accumulating. So that's an environmental disaster.
Coming up after the break, we'll have more on the crisis facing Australia's river systems. Stay with 101 East.